The next question is, what is the primary cause of Jīvātma separating from Paramaatma? And because this is such an intricate question, I would like to call out and thank Mr. Shyam Venkitesh for asking this. But first, let us invest in understanding this question. A Jīvātma is one who goes through the cycle of birth and death until liberated, moksha-prāpti, as in attaining the moksha. Basically, Shyam has used the term separation for getting bound into a karmic cycle. The question here is, what is the primary cause for one to get bound to a karmic cycle? Let us take the darshanas and gain some understanding. As per Advaita, the Jīvātma is none other than Brahman, the Paramātma. The individuality of the Jivan is caused by avidyā, ignorance. The identity is thus gained because of ignorance, creating a superimposition of the body over Atma and seeing the body as the identity. Once this ignorance about the self is removed, the karmic cycle is destroyed, which is what we call moksha. In Visishtadvaita Parampara, the Jīvātma is distinct, a real individual entity, but inseparably part of God. It is often used the Angi and Angam relationship, as in the relationship between the limbs and the body. The soul is eternally dependent on Paramātma, which is Sriman Narayana. The soul or Atma is seen as Lord's body and also as the Atman dwelling in all. Moksha is attaining proximity to Lord Narayana and eternally serving him. In Dvaita Darshana, the Jīvātma is seen as completely distinct and eternally separate from the Paramātma. The Jivan is real individual and inherently different from God. There is no identity or merging with Brahman even in liberation. They attribute it to the prakritic influence over the soul, which is the cause of Jivan. Through devotion, the prakritic influence is removed. Some give the example of Jivan like being a half-filled cup. And in devotion, Bhagavan helps the cup to be filled, which is what they call as moksha. The question which I modified is, what is the primary cause for one to get bound to a karmic cycle? The rephrased question makes it more appropriate as traditions identify the term Jivan differently. Before we jump into detailed answer, let us see how each of these darshanas expresses this. In Advaita Darshana, Jivan is not created. It is a mithya, a false identification caused by ignorance. In Visishtadvaita Parampara, this question is not answered to the extent I have studied. The general response is ignorance and karma. They qualify it further by stating, when an ignorance is started is an invalid question. In a casual discussion, I had once asked, does it mean if all Jivan attain moksha, there will be no life? And the person who answered me said yes. Very resounding yes. I tried to search for any references, but I have not been able to find a reference to that yes so far. In Dvaita Parampara, Jivan is created by God as servants of God with uniqueness and diversity. The purpose is to serve and worship God eternally according to one's nature. Taking this as the background, I will try to answer the question. In our tradition, we follow the Shankara tradition, but we have our own way of defining it or way of elaborating it for understanding. So I'm just going to try and do that. We define ignorance of this sort as an expression of the Chaitanya. We qualify this with Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, which states, in the beginning there was only the Atman, the one without a second. Hiranyagarbha, in Upanishad it is the name that is used. Hiranyagarbha existed alone. But being alone, he felt no joy. Because for joy, a relationship is essential. So he thought, why not I create another so that there may be a companionship. From himself, he divided into two. Upon seeing the other, he was afraid. Then he realized there is nothing else but me. What is the fear? The key words in the mantra are Ekameva Advatiyam. This is where he says it is only one without any second. That is the existence of Hiranyagarbha. Then Dvitiyatvai Bhayam Bhavati. The fear arises when there is a duality. Tasmad Ayam Stri Ayam Puman Iti. This verse mentions that it is seen like Stri referring to the female and Puman referring to the male as an Adam and Eve kind of incarnations. But that is not the context in which the Upanishad is taught. We will talk about it when we discuss about the Upanishads or when we take the Upanishad class. The emphasis is the fear experienced upon seeing the second. This is what we quote to say it is the Chaitanyam that creates ignorance as well. Logically, we place our argument that an inert object cannot have the ability to differentiate. Ignorance is differentiating between knowledge and the lack of it. And because an inert object cannot make such differentiation, the ignorance is and can only be created by Chaitanyam. Brahman is the undivided combination of Prakriti and Purusha. Or as Advaitic tradition says, the māyā and Paramātma Swarupam or Parabrahmam. And because the Prakriti has a dependent existence, the Paramātma remains the base of Prakriti as well. This makes Prakriti and Purusha as separately inseparable. By this, I mean both Prakriti and Purusha will coexist eternally. To this, we quote from Bhagavad Gita. Prakritim Purusham Chaiva Vidyanadi Ubhavapi Vikarams Gunams Chaiva Viddhif Prakriti Sambhavam. So here, in this shloka, which comes in the 13th chapter, the 20th shloka, here Bhagavan says both Prakriti and Purusha have no beginning or an end. And concludes saying that Prakriti is made of the three guns. So, how is ignorance created? When units of Paramatma Swarupam fail to act as a single unit, it divides itself as Jivan from Paramatma. Now, this division is the reason for sound and excellent arguments of it being an independent unit in Dvaitic, or units that are branches in Visishtadvaitic darshanas. Advaitic tradition expresses this as mithya, or a division that actually does not exist but appears to be so. For this, we quote from Srimad Bhagavatam. It comes in the Dasamaskanda, 89th Adhyaya. So the way it goes is, once sage Bhrigu set out to test the Trimurtis to determine who among them was supreme. There are some other traditions which say Bhrigu went to invite which of the three is supreme to the yajna. That is the background story. But basically to find which is the supreme of the god who should be invited into the yajna. That is the reason why he goes. When he reaches Vaikuntha, Lord Vishnu was resting. He was given extreme honor both by Brahma and Shiva, but Lord Vishnu was just sleeping. Bhrigu was angered by this. He thought he was being ignored and kicked Vishnu on his chest. Instead of reacting with anger, Lord Vishnu gently holds sage's feet, asking him if he was hurt. This act of humility enraged Mahalakshmi. Mahalakshmi resides in the chest of Lord Vishnu. The chest of Lord Vishnu is the abode of Mahalakshmi. So she thought it is an insult to her as well, or it is an insult to Lord Vishnu. There are two ways of putting it again. Upset that Lord Vishnu had tolerated this insult, she left Vaikuntha and was later born as Bhudevi or Padma, leading to her eventual reunion with Vishnu in his earthly incarnations. There are several stories. One where they identify this reunion as part of Varaha avatar. And there are some where in some traditions they express this to be Lord Ram and Sita. Sita, as we all know, is born from the earth. Mahalakshmi is declared to be in the heart of Lord Vishnu. The Angam and Angi relationship is addressed with this. The heart represents an inseparable nature of Lakshmi and Vishnu. Heart is not considered as a limb of a person. It holds an inseparable oneness with the Paramātma. The ignorance arose when Mahalakshmi identifies herself as separate from Paramātma. This is equated to the Chaitanya Amsham failing to be the whole. Here, Mahalakshmi sees herself different from that of Lord Vishnu. This story further emphasizes the importance of bhakti or devotion, leading to Bhagavan blessing you with reunion. Padma, Bhudevi, or Sita exhibit their Atma Swarupam as one with Bhagavan. You will see that all through, be it in Ramayana or Bhagavatam or other Purans, you will see that the inseparable nature is very well experienced and expressed by Mahalakshmi. Right, when the separation occurred, she was born in the Bhuloka or in the earth, or she took a human form. That is the key which we take. For convenience, we can look at it as this whole, which is one Parabrahma, is broken into millions of pieces. The whole continues to support the Prakriti. Now, ignorance arises when the portion of the Prakriti that this unit is supporting undergoes a change and the unit resists that change. Such resistance could be due to logical reasoning. This could be due to love or devotion or any other reason which leads the unit to seeing the right and wrong or the dualistic way of looking at it. We categorize them as satyam or ritham and anritham, the truth versus falsehood, yuktam or ayuktam, the appropriateness of some action happening, or samyam and viparitam, right? Which is we also use nyayam or viparitam or nyayam or anyayam, which is legal or ethical fairness or unfairness. So there are various ways that one can interpret what is happening and determine that this is wrong and become part of the Prakriti, because you are no longer part of the whole. So now if you tie this back to what we saw in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, the Chaitanya Amsham, which is constantly supporting the change to the Prakriti, when it fails to see the oneness, it creates a relationship between the unit and the whole. This is the base for one falling into the karmic cycle. And so long as one sees the two, they continue to be a karta and bhokta. A sense of I am the doer, I am the experiencer is what we go through. The karma yoga, bhakti yoga, as well as jnana yoga are means for one to remove the ignorant way of looking at the world as I and the rest. The subtlety here is one who sees the above as three are still failing to see the whole. What I mean is those who see the bhakti marga or karma yoga, bhakti yoga, etc., when they see it as separate things, they still fail to see the whole. And that is the reason why jnanat yevatu kaivalyam is also said. It is only through jnana that this kaivalya, this moksha-prāpti can be achieved, is said. Right? So, if in case you put jnana as one, no, it is all of them put together. It is seeing everything as a whole, as one, and being a witness and an enabler of the Prakriti is the Atma's true Swarup. When that Swarup is attained, the moksha is attained. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said as, the karma yoga and jnana yoga as one, and bhakti yoga is separately dealt with. But even in bhakti yoga, the emphasis is on ananya bhakti. In all of them, you will see the karta bhavam, that I am the doer, is lost. Right, like in the 5th chapter, the 2nd shloka, it goes like this: Sannyasa karma yogascha nishreyasa karavubhau tayostu karma sannyasat karma yogo vishishyate, is the way that particular shloka goes. We will catch up when we are in the 5th chapter. But here the intent is to say that these two were equated and bhakti was called out separately. Ananyas chintayanto mam, as it comes in the as it is, it's a very famous shloka too, where the ananya bhakti is emphasized, and we will talk about what is ananya bhakti when we get there. So with this clarification, I hope I have been able to address the factor of ignorance being the cause of birth and death, of the karmic cycle, of Jivan separating from Paramātma. Right? So this has been addressed in my opinion. As I mentioned earlier, this is not an easy concept for one to explain and also for one to understand. So As always, feel free to reach out to discuss, debate, challenge, or seek clarifications. Those are the ones which will enable all of us to grow together. Before I conclude, I would like to mention that my sister, Mrs. Sumathi Sathesh, also asked this question. In her words, the question goes like this: why is it that Brahman, which is Sarvajña, even gives space for Alpagya? The answer that we have discussed above is also applicable for this question if we take Alpagya to mean Jivan. But let us try to explore this a little bit. What is Sarvajña? One who knows everything is Sarvajña. And one who has a partial knowledge is Alpagya. So that is the way the definition of these two terms come in. The challenge here is, if I know everything, how can I be not knowing everything? How can I be knowing only little? Right? How can knowing little be born from knowing everything? Is the gist of the question. It is a very subtle aspect, and I will try to explain it as best as I can. How can one be in these two opposing views is the base of the question. Now, because of this nature of the question, I'm going to take it beyond Jivan. For the Sarvajña versus Alpagya, we give two answers. One is Atma is Sarvajña and Jivan is Alpagya. This we take it from the point of view of subject and object for convenience. Anything that is objectified remains Alpagya and the subject remains the Sarvajña. That is the base of the answer. When one identifies oneself as an object limited by space, time and property, kala desa vastu parichinnam is the way that we say, right? When they limit, as when I objectify myself as this individual, I have limited myself to this body, perhaps to this house to which I belong and so on, and that I'm in this color, I have got this hair, kind of a stuff. So we have the time that I'm born now, or I'm here, kind of a stuff at this point in time. So I am dividing myself, or I am limiting myself to the space, the place where I am, the time at this moment where I am, and the property that I'm this much tall, this much XYZ, etc. So when we get into that, as soon as I objectify myself, I become an Alpagya. But when I see myself as the Atman, I remain ever the Sarvajña. In this explanation, Brahman does not create Alpagya. Your own vision of limiting yourself has set you up as Alpagya, as the subject has identified itself with the object, with the limitations that objects always have. The second explanation that we give is, we say Sarvajña refers to the ability of knowing and not knowing as we define it. This is because the moment knowledge is defined, it has been objectified. Brahman provides the ability to know as a Sarvajña. I am able to know things. That ability to know is what determines the Sarvajña. Thus, anything known or anything that can be known can only be done through this Chaitanya Amsham, which is the reason we say this Chaitanya Amsham is Sarvajña. As an Alpagya, one is dependent on Sarvajña to know. And the knowledge that is acquired through this ability is identified as knowledge which is limited to a specific perspective or specific object. And so, through this knowledge, to identify the soul is not possible because you have limited yourself and you are supposed to look into the unlimited. Right? So, the question from Sumathi was, why is it that Brahman, which is Sarvajña, even gives space for Alpagya? It is not Brahman giving space for Alpagya. Brahman's role is to enable the knowledge as we understand, knowing about something. That aspect of it is from the source, which is Sarvajña. And I become an Alpagya not because I am Alpagya, but because I have associated myself to this limited body, to this object. So I hope I have answered the questions to the best that I could. And if there are further questions, I'll be more than happy to take it and debate with you, discuss with you, or clarify it to you. Thank you for your patient listening. I will get in touch with you later.